Hello, my name's Adam Letman and I'm running the Grade 1 Music Theory course. And today we're going to be doing bass clef. So if you watched the last lesson, that was treble clef and how to read the notes. Treble clef was the big swirly one, and we did face in the space and every good boy deserves football, or every girl buys dog food. That was the treble clef. Today's one, we're going to do the bass clef. Now the bass clef is different. We read the music differently, but all the note values stay exactly the same. So if you remember last lesson, we did crotchets, we did minims, and we did semi-breves, and then all of those as rests. Well, that doesn't change. That stays throughout music, no problem. Reading music on a different clef, we use a different technique, a different set of words to help us remember them. But all the notation stays exactly the same. So let me screen share it and we'll get started. So last lesson we had this. We were reading the treble clef and we did, face in the space, and then we did every good boy deserves football, and then we did a couple of different note values. So we did this as a rest, which is a minim rest, a 2-beat rest, and then we did it as a note. We also did a semi-breve rest, which is that, and then we also did semi-breve as a note. This week we're going to do bass clef. Now bass clef is slightly different. Bass clef is this one here. So it's not as swirly as that one, and it's got 2 dots after it. So this one is the bass clef, this one is the treble clef. Now, as I say every lesson, if at any point you're getting a bit confused, a bit stuck, just pause it. Just pause the lesson and rewind it. Maybe write a couple of things down and then go back to it. For this lesson in particular, it's probably a good idea that you have a piece of paper and a notepad and a pen and a couple of other things. So if you want to draw or take notes, you can. There's no problem with that. So let me just get that green line out of the way. There we go. That's better. Just so there's no confusion. Okay, so when we did the treble clef, we used a set of words to remember where the notes are. It's the same on bass clef, but it's important that we don't get them mixed up, because that will just lead to a lot of confusion. So the easiest thing, or the easiest way that I do that, is I don't teach my students a way to remember the notes on the lines of bass clef. I just get them to work it out. What I instead do is the spaces in bass clef. So treble clef, the spaces spell face in the space. We did that last time. Now it's different in bass clef. We have these 4 notes, and it looks the same, but the clef at the beginning tells us that it's different. It's a different set of notes. Bass clef is for lower instruments, by the way. Instruments like a trombone, a cello, a double bass, a tuba. Instruments that would play a sound that is really low. Now, for those of you doing this that are pianists, you will also read bass clef. For a pianist, bass clef is your left hand, the low notes, the bottom end of the piano. Treble clef is the right hand, the higher end, the higher pitched notes. So, bass clef. How do we know what these notes are? This is how I remember it. Aliens can't eat goats. Now, I don't know whether that's true. I've never actually spoken to an alien to kind of ask them, but I would imagine it's true, because I don't imagine goat being very nice. Anyway, aliens can't eat goats. That's the notes in the left hand in the spaces. That is different from the right hand, which is face in the space. By right hand, I also mean treble clef, for those of you that don't play piano. So treble clef, which is the big swirly one here, the notes in the spaces are F, A, C, and E, face. The notes in the left hand, or the bass clef if you don't play piano, this one here, it's aliens can't eat goats. A, C, E, and G. So, same as we did last time, I'm going to mix them up. I'm going to have a whole line of them, and I want you to name the notes. I might have done an extra bar then, that time. Oh yeah, I did. That's my fault. Let me get rid of that last bar. Okay, there we go. So I'll do the first one, or I'll do the first two actually, and then if you could do the rest on your own, that'd be fantastic. So it's in the third space and it's in the left hand. So it's aliens can't eat goats. So A, C, E. It must be E because it's in the third space. Aliens can't eat. So it's E. The second one, it's in the second space. Aliens can't. It's a C. Okay, if you want to pause the video now and work out the rest on your own, and then I'll give you the answers when you press play again. So if you want to pause the video now, and then I'll give you the answers. So we did the first two. That was E and C. Then we have A, E, C, A, C, G, top G, E, G, E, C, E, A, C, and A again. And they're the notes in the spaces on bass clef. Now, the reason that I don't teach my students the notes on the lines for bass clef, usually they end up getting more confused because they get right hand and left hand mixed up, or treble clef and bass clef mixed up. So, as with the treble clef, so if I do F to A, well, what note is in between F and A? So what is on the second line? It's a G. Well, if you know the notes in the spaces, you don't need to know the notes on the lines, you can work it out. So F, or in this case, sorry, if we did A to C, if you know that's A and you know that's C, well, what's one note in between A and C? B. The same as it would be up here. So if I did A and C up here, what's in between A and C? B. That's right in the middle of them. It's important that you think of the notes on the stave as a spectrum. It's not like a set of notes and then nothing happens outside of that. All it is 7 notes that goes from low to high. And an example of that I'll show you. So there's G. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, and then G. Then we're back at G. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes, and then 8 is G again. So the first note repeats again. Okay, well, what happens when we get back to the beginning? We do it again. So the next note after G is, so this is G. What's after G? A. Same again. A. So this note is A. What comes after A? B. What comes after B? So this is B. What's one note higher than B? C. And it goes on. Music, it's not, a lot of people when they look at the stave, you know, especially with bass clef and treble clef, it's confusing because it's, I know what an octave is, and then going outside of that confuses me a bit. It just continues. If you know 7 notes, you know, C to C or G to G, an octave, well, beyond that, it just repeats. It just keeps on going, not infinitely, but you know, forever and forever. So the note that is probably most important that we know actually for this exam, or you know, one of the most important notes, is a note called middle C. Now, middle C is essential for your knowledge of reading music. It's like a guide point for being able to read both clefs pretty fluently. Now, middle C in treble clef is here. That's middle C. Now, I'm doing it as a semi-breve here, just because it looks neater. I could also do it as a crotchet. I could also do it as a minim. I'm just doing it as a semi-breve just because it looks neater. So that's middle C in treble clef, that one there. Middle C in bass clef is this one. That is where middle C is in both clefs. So in the bass clef, it's pretty high up. In the treble clef, it's low down. In the treble clef, it's got a line through it and it's under the stave. In bass clef, it's got a line through it and it's above the stave. Now, what I meant before by like the staves are like a spectrum of music just going up and down. Well, if I did this as a minim and then this is a minim, what's one note lower than C? I nearly said it then. What's one note lower than C? B. Well, if we go one note lower than C, that's B. If we do the exact same thing here, what's one note lower than C? B. We just go down one note. Music is a spectrum. It's not, you know, the rules don't change is what I'm saying. Once you know one note up from C is D, one note up from D is E, you'll be able to work out all the notes. So, the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to fill in the lines and the spaces in the bass clef, and I would like you to name all the notes. So I'll do the first two. In fact, no, I'll do the first three because, you know, people can find bass clef pretty tricky. We'll do the first three together, and then I want you to do the rest on your own, please. So I'm doing them as crotchets as well, just so I can fit more notes in. Okay. So, first note, it's in a space, so we know the rhyme for the spaces in left hand. Aliens can't eat goats. It's the second space. Aliens can't. So it's C. This note is C. This one is on a line, and it's in between the third and fourth space. Aliens can't eat goats. So it's in between E and G. What note's in between E and G? F. F is in the middle of E and G. And this next one, this is the most essential note. You know, remember what I said before? This is middle C. Now, middle C is like a guide point for reading music. Same as I said before. It lets you know it's like a marker of where you are in the clef. So this is middle C. And I'll do one more. We haven't done notes outside of the clef. Outside of the stave, other than middle C. What note is this? Use what I was saying before. Just think about it logically. You can see it's one note lower than C. So what is it? Go one note down from C. And what note have we got? B. One note down from C is B. Okay, if you want to pause the video again and try and work out all the rest of the notes on your own, and then I will tell you the answers. So you want to pause it now? Okay. Let's do the answers. So we've done the first bar, C, F, C, and B. This one, it's the third space. Aliens can't eat goats, so it's E. This one, it's one note lower than E, so it's D. This, we've got a G, one note lower than A from, you know, aliens can't eat goats. Top one, that's another A. So this one, this bottom one here is a G, A, G, D, A, C, F, B, D, and then we end on a G. Okay, so here's something that's pretty handy to know as well. If I do a melody in the treble clef, by the way, this is very likely to come up in your exam, so I would suggest you write this bit down. You might be given a melody, and the melody will look like this, something like this. Something like that. Now, how can you put that into bass clef? How does that work? Can you work out how that would work? How can we put that into bass clef? What note can we use as a guide point to know how to write it in bass clef? Middle C. Middle C. So this note here is middle C. What's one note above middle C? D. One note below middle C is B. You know this is B. One note lower than B. A. So if you get asked to write a melody now at the same pitch as the treble clef in bass clef, this is what you would do. You find your guide tone here, which we'll say is, that is middle C. That's going to be our guide. And middle C is the second note. So there we go. We've got one note definitely right. Now, The note before middle C up here, it's one note higher, so it's a D. So in the bass clef, we just go one note higher. That's a D. After middle C, what have we got? We've got B. So go one note down. Here, this is one note down from B, it must be an A. We go one note down again. And there we have the exact same melody at the exact same pitch, which is crucial, in treble and bass clef. Now it's so essential that you know that for your exam, that middle C, if you know where middle C is in both clefs, you can work out the melody from there. As well, I've had a couple of students say that they get confused if, so for example, if you have a melody like this, where there's like a big leap in it, so you've got like D, C, G, and oh, I don't know, that's too low. Well, if you know that this is C, what's one note down from C? B. Okay, what's one note down from B? A. There you go, same note. If you know where middle C is, you can basically work out any note. So that's bass clef. They're the notes that you'll need to know. That's also treble clef. Now the last thing I would like to cover is more note values. So we're going to recap that. We did that last week. What are these called and how much are they worth? All these black notes with a tail. How much are they worth? What are they called? Crotchets, and they're worth 1 beat. What if we did this? What are these called? I don't want the note names like B, C, D. I want the note value and the name of it. So these are called minims, and they're worth 2. Again, if you do this, how much are they worth? What are they called? Semi-breves. Now, last lesson I said everything adds up to 4, and we're gonna stick with that rule. Everything will add up to 4 for now. So the next note value that we need to do are called quavers. Now, when I made this point last week about how, you know, it adds up to 4, everything adds up to 4. How much are these worth then? So it has to add up to 4, so each of these is worth how much? They're worth half a beat. Because there's 8 of them and it has to add up to 4, therefore each one is worth half. Now I'm doing them on B just so that we focus on the rhythm, not the notes. We're just doing the rhythm. Rhythm as in quavers, crotchets, you know, minims, things like that. So these are quavers, these are worth half. And the bar is full. Same as if I did a bar full of crotchets, each of them is worth 1. A bar of minims, worth 2. And then a semi-breve, which is worth 4. So I'm going to write in these different note values. Also, what I'm going to do is put their rest equivalent below. I'll show you what I mean by that. Oh gosh, that's high, isn't it? Okay, there we go. So this is what these look like in rest. So I'm just going to write above what each one is and how they work. So these are quavers. That's a fancy font. Wow. Okay, and they're worth half. These quavers, and each of these is worth half of a beat. Now the way that you tell quavers apart from crotchets is they're joined by a line like this. See how crotchets, there's no line in the middle? Whereas here, there's a line in the middle. Now, it's probably worth saying, just in case it happens in the exam, if you get a quaver on its own, it looks like that. It's got like a squiggly tail. But it's still just a quaver. So, quavers are worth half a beat. Half a crotchet. Next one. These are called crotchets, which we've done. And they are worth 1. They're worth 1 whole beat. Then we have minims. they're worth 2 beats, and then the last one is a semi-breve, and that's worth 4 beats. Now, if you want to take a screenshot of this or copy it down, write it out, what I've done is you've got the name of the notes, how much they're worth, and also what they look like as a rest. So this is what they look like as rests. The minims as well from last week. Minims are worth less, they're weaker than a semi-breve, so they lie on the line. A semi-breve is stronger, so it holds onto that top line here, like that, as a rest. So, in 2 lessons we've covered reading treble clef and bass clef, also rests, and also a bit of rhythm. Now, for the next lesson, the rhythm is going to get slightly more complicated. We're going to add in semi-quavers as well. So if you can, before next lesson, maybe if you've got some spare time, have a Google as to what a semi-quaver is, and then we're going to go over it in the lesson. We're also going to start looking at time signatures. But if you've got this far and you've understood everything, you're doing great. You're well on your way to getting that grade 1. As always, if you're struggling with anything, drop me an email. I would much rather you email me, and I'll send you some material than you be stuck and it's like in class when a teacher asks a question but you feel like too embarrassed to be like, I'm sorry, can you do that again? I don't really understand. With the videos, rewind them or drop me an email. Either one is completely fine. Well done for finishing the lesson. Take care and best of luck with your exam.